College basketball season is here. It's the first day of practice, and we're so excited. Duke Hoops right around the corner.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is J.J. Jackson. It's so great to have you here with us today on Monday, September 22nd, 2025. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. And on today's show, we got to highlight the start of this Duke basketball season as the Blue Devils 2025-2026 campaign begins today. First practice for head coach Jon Scheyer as he opens up his fourth season as head coach. We'll talk about all of it with our pal Kevin Connelly from Ball Durham. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcast. Be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Go ahead and like this video, share it with your friends as we're continuing to grow our YouTube audience. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let's keep growing this Locked On Blue Devils community. You can follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils, and I'm there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. Congrats to the Duke football team for their victory over NC State this past weekend. We'll touch on that at the tail end of today's show. But without further ado, Kevin Connelly joins me here on the show. We know that Duke basketball never stops. We're able to talk about it 365 days a year, Kevin, and you're a big reason why I'm able to have these conversations so frequently. Here we are, checking another milestone, right? It was the start of fall sports. It was the end of the transfer portal. There were various checkpoints that we reached along the way. We've reached another one today as the NCAA now has opened up the practice season for basketball. Hope you're doing well, my friend.
I am doing good, JJ. We've reached it. It's the first day of practice, and it's an exciting time, and basketball season finally feels like it's back.
So Jon Scheyer and the squad open up practice ahead of the 2025-2026 season. And as we look at this Duke team, there are a couple of things that we'll get into here today that we know about this squad. We know this is a team that is returning 5 players from a Final Four squad a year ago. And as we've talked about this offseason, that is so rare. In today's day and age of college basketball, you look everywhere, so many teams lose players to the transfer portal, to graduation, to the NBA draft. Duke didn't lose any of their scholarship guys to the transfer portal, and they were able to convince 5 different players that the right decision was to come back and play another year for Duke. That's huge, man, as they start to open up practice for this year's squad, that you've got continuity from a year ago.
No, absolutely. And I think even when you look at last year's team, and I think continuity was a little bit of a question mark just because it was only Tyrese Proctor and Caleb Foster that were returning from the year prior. And it was you're bringing in a lot of transfers, a lot of freshmen, and how are things going to look early in the season? Now, granted, it was a very talented roster on paper before they even played a game, but it was how good are they going to be very early in the season? And we saw this team lose in their 3rd game against Kentucky. We saw the team lose in their 6th game against Kansas, but we also saw a convincing victory in their 5th game on the road against Arizona, and then obviously go on winning against Auburn, and then what they did in ACC play during the year. So you would think with more continuity would maybe bring a sharper start to the early part of the season, but I still think that remains to be seen because I have a feeling a lot of the guys that are going to get significant playing time early in the season are some of the freshmen, and obviously the sophomores who are returning. And the one thing for Duke is, we talk about how difficult the non-conference schedule is, but there is a soft landing per se, right? I mean, yes, that first game is against Texas in Charlotte, and a game where the crowd should favor a Duke home atmosphere.
Yeah.
Then Western Carolina, and then Army on the road on Veterans Day, which should be a really cool atmosphere. And then it's Indiana State. Then you have Kansas in the Garden, and then Niagara and Howard before you really start getting rolling on Thanksgiving against Arkansas. So in those first 6 games, 4 of them are kind of layups. So I think that could bode well for the team in, even though you have that continuity with the players returning, trying to get the freshmen up to speed very quickly early in the season. And I'll be honest, it feels like 6 games before Thanksgiving is a lot. So we'll see how this team is able to kind of endure that tough, grueling stretch to begin the year, and just in terms of a volume of games before they're able to get into a tough, grueling stretch in terms of opponents from Thanksgiving on.
Well, like you talked about with this team in particular, with the 5 guys coming back, they're going to be complemented by 5 freshmen on this year's team for Duke. I love the continuity piece, but then early on in the year, it's important for a role definition almost to take place for a squad. Who are, it's one thing for us to speculate here, the starting 5 or the closing 5 to a basketball game. Your defensive unit that you want to put on the floor in crunch time situations, the tall lineups, the small lineups, the pick, everything, like the role definition period is what you could start to see in things like practice here for one. And then now once you get into those game scenarios, the exhibitions, the first few games of the year, that sort of thing, those things can start to be decided.
Well, yeah, and I think you get a sense of that now. I'm sure Jon Scheyer and his coaching staff have a sense of it already from watching summer workouts and being involved in that. And I think us as fans, based on videos or potential or things we hear about these players, also have some type of a mindset of what we think the starting 5 is going to be or something like that. So you certainly get a better idea now that you're into official practice. We're about 4 weeks away from that first exhibition against UCF. And then obviously a week later is Tennessee, the exhibition game. And then before you know it, the start of the season will be here against Texas. So I think we will get a better feel of what this team is and who they can be and who's going to be on the floor a lot once we hit those first 2 exhibition games.
Day 1 of practice, how many for sure starters do you see on this team?
That's a good question. Going through my head really quickly. I'm going to think out loud with you.
Yeah.
Foster, Boozer, Ngongba, Evans, 4. I think that's kind of what I've been kind of saying throughout the offseason. Right now, I guess I would give a slight edge to Dame Sarr as that 5th, but I think right now there's probably 4 locked-in starters: Caleb Foster, Isaiah Evans, Cameron Boozer, Pat Ngongba. I would guess that 5th slot might be up for grabs as of right now.
Hearing more positive things about Hymenia, so we'll see if he gets one of those spots, and then also we'll see kind of that guard spot back and forth between Caden Boozer and Caleb Foster. I feel more convinced on 3 the more I sit and think about it, with it being Evans, Boozer, and then Ngongba on the interior. Although, Kevin, I've been all over the place this offseason because I still see a world where maybe you want to bring Malik Brown to start the game and set the tone defensively and bring Ngongba in. But then the more I think about it, and those reactions like I just got from you tell me, actually, let's stick to bringing Brown off the bench.
Yeah, I think he's just such a weapon off the bench with his versatility. And if it's a game where Ngongba doesn't have it, you're comfortable putting Malik Brown out there for 27 minutes, although he started the game off the bench. So I think that's a good spot for him. And I also think, now I haven't heard anything. I'm assuming that at the start of practice today or this week, or he has been cleared for contact.
Yeah.
But I think that's also just something to keep in the back of your mind, coming off of 2 shoulder dislocations on the same shoulder that required surgery. And throughout this entire offseason, he wasn't allowed to go through contact. He was doing some drills later in the summer against air. So I think that's just one thing to keep in the back of your mind. But I certainly think Dame Sarr, Nick Hymenia, Caden Boozer to an extent as well, probably all in the mix to be that other starter. And who knows about Darren Harris? Maybe he could crack that starting lineup as a shooting guard, just being a sophomore and going through the process and knowing what is expected of him this year. So I do think that's another interesting option that Duke could use in their starting lineup. Is it a favorite? Is it a likely one? Probably not. But at least right now, I feel very confident saying those 4 players that I mentioned, Foster, Evans, Boozer, Ngongba, are pretty locked into the starting lineup, barring injury.
Well, I've made it known. I've got a lot of stock in the play of Darren Harris and what he's going to be able to do for this upcoming season. So we'll see now that these practice sessions get going for Duke basketball. I want to talk a little bit more about Darren Harris and his role for this squad after we take our first timeout here on today's show. Locked On Blue Devils here today, brought to you by our friends over at Square. Your neighborhood favorite spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home. Whether it's the local sports bar packed on game days, the coffee shop that knows your order by heart, or the corner deli that's been serving your community for decades. These are the places that bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. I can think about a couple of different spots here in my neighborhood locally that I go and grab coffee once or twice a week, and I'm able to see them using the device of Square, and the energy is just incredible in it. It's awesome. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood, a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. The show today is also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with the can't-miss offer. How about our in-state Carolina Panthers with their first win of the season yesterday over the Atlanta Falcons? Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel is awesome because you're able to jump in however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or jumping into the live action as it unfolds. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. FanDuel is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, Kevin Connelly's here with us on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, and we're talking about Jon Scheyer's team opening up practice here today. Recently, a friend of the program, Brendan Marks of The Athletic, put out a post with 10 thoughts about the 10 rotation players for Duke basketball. He had gone to a workout recently to see the team in action. And Kevin, a lot of people walked away pretty impressed with what they saw out of Darren Harris, which I love. I was big on him last season. Obviously, the role wasn't quite there for him with Con Knippel, Isaiah Evans, all these guys kind of in front of him. But in college basketball, and particularly playing for Duke and playing for a Jon Scheyer team, if you can knock down shots from the outside, there's going to be a role for you. And it feels like Duke is trying to figure out how they can make a player like Darren Harris fit into their squad for this upcoming season.
Well, yeah, JJ, the one thing I will say is, like, it's tough to be successful as a freshman. Like, not everybody is Cooper Flagg and Con Knippel and Kaman Malawach and Zion Williamson and Paolo Banchero, and the list goes on and on. Like, you're getting adjusted to a completely different lifestyle for the most part, living on your own, caring for yourself on your own, getting adjusted to the academic rigors of being a college freshman. And then, oh, by the way, you're going to be on the team that's one of the best in college basketball, and the time commitment and all that goes into that.
Sure.
That is basically your life. Plus you have to handle everything else on the side, and learning the speed of college basketball and learning the physicality and trying to get your body right and all these other things. So, like, it is very difficult, the transition from high school senior to college freshman for a non-athlete. Just imagine how much more difficult it is for a high-level athlete like Darren Harris. So I think there's a lot of learning curves that he had to go through his freshman season. Some probably that maybe he wishes he didn't have to go through. And there was more playing time for him on the court. But I think it was key for him to come back to Duke this season. Obviously, a player that easily could have jumped in the transfer portal and gone somewhere else and played upwards of 20 to 30 minutes per game this season. But he didn't want to do that. He's sticking it out at Duke, playing another season. And the one thing at Duke you always have to be wary about is, yes, the coaching staff wants you to succeed and wants you to develop. But if there's a chance they can get a player that's quote-unquote better or more talented than you, they're going to do it. Like, their jobs are to win games. Yes, it's to develop players, but bottom line, their job is to win games. So the fact that Darren Harris is here, and look, when you look at the rest of this roster and the guards that are up for discussion, kind of in that final starters role that we were just talking about, or getting significant playing time coming off the bench, you're looking at a guy like Dame Sarr. And now I think Dame Sarr has an advantage over Darren Harris because he's bigger than them, right? Duke lists Sarr at 6'8" and Harris at 6'5". We're talking about Caden Boozer. And yes, Boozer is smaller, and I think more people see him as a point guard than as a shooting guard. And then Jimenez is that wing type, but I think he leans more as a wing forward than a wing guard, but also at 6'8". So for Darren Harris, I think there is a lane for him to get significant playing time. But as you mentioned, it starts with that jump shot. And if he's able to knock down 3-pointers, there's going to be minutes to be had for you. The biggest question for him, it's easy to hit those shots in an empty gym, in a practice type setting. When the lights come on and the lights are at their brightest and you're in the heat of the moment of a critical game, that's when you have to hit your shots. And if you're hitting them, you're going to stay out there. And if you're not, you're probably going to find yourself on the bench.
Because we'll give people the numbers. They're right. I mean, as a freshman, Darren Harris went 5 of 22 from 3-point range. That's not great. He was 10 of 19 on 2-point shots. But when you just look at the stroke and you know what he was able to do in high school and on the AAU level, and then what he's been able to show in practice and in open gym settings, he feels like a guy that is a knockdown shooter. His teammates rave about his ability to knock it down from the outside. So we'll certainly see if that's something that he's able to improve on. Thinking about this, go ahead.
I think it might be a tough comparison for Darren Harris, but I think in terms of his skill set coming in as a decorated shooter, I think the two obvious comparisons to make are guys like Jaden Schutt, who obviously I know, JJ, you were super high on in his freshman season at Duke, and then a guy like TJ Power. And like TJ Power shot 15 of 42 during his freshman season at Duke. And this past year at Virginia, he was very bad, was 6 of 33 and completely regressed from what we saw in his freshman year at Duke. And then Jaden Schutt, we obviously know that something was going on in that 23-24 season and he didn't play. But as a freshman, he was 7 of 20. And then at Virginia Tech this past season, when he's able to get on the floor, he still shoots that 35%, although it's a bigger volume. So I think what we didn't see from those two playing in their sophomore seasons at Duke, you're hoping to see that player development from Darren Harris, who only shot 22% from three, as you mentioned, 5 of 22. So it's going to be really interesting to see, especially early in this season for him, because that's where he can build his confidence against some of those lesser opponents that I mentioned at the top of your broadcast here.
I love our basketball program. I love a basketball program like Duke, where the expectation is to win national championships. And that's going to be the case once again with this squad to open up practice. I know it's a long way down the road, and the team is definitely going to work day in and day out, one day better or 1% better than the day before. There will be so many different sayings and philosophies and mindsets that they go for. But bottom line is, Kevin, when you play for Duke and when you're a program like Duke, you know that you're defined by success that you have in the postseason. And it just fires me up, man, to think about all the talent on this year's roster, the coaching improvements I think that we will see from Scheyer as he gets more acclimated to being a college head coach going into his 4th season now. Like, let's get after it, man. I so badly want to see Duke be able to build off what they did in the Final Four a year ago and see if they can start to run it back.
It's going to be tough, JJ. I mean, I did not shy away from the expectations last season, because when I looked at that team on paper, primarily centered around Cooper Flagg, I said, this is a national championship caliber team. And I've said this on my own show. I've said this on your show. Right now, when I look at this current roster, I see a really good team. I see a team that can continue to get better throughout the course of the season and has a high potential, especially if primarily the sophomores take that expected leap. But right now, I don't know if I see a national championship caliber roster. I could be wrong, and I can change my opinion once I see them in actual games. But right now, I think I see a team that will be a major contender for the ACC championship. Right now, I think I see a second weekend team. I don't know if I quite see a Final Four team yet, but certainly that could change once we see some real games and get some real results with this compilation of Duke players on this roster.
Well, the journey starts today. Day one of practice for the Duke basketball team, and excited to see what they're going to be able to do. Right now, we know that the Duke football team is a couple of games into the season now. They played an ACC matchup this past weekend against NC State. There were some highs and some lows, but it ultimately ended with a victory for Duke football. We'll talk about that here in a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by The Game. Quick question for all you college football fans out there. If you could go back in time and sit front row at your school's biggest rivalry game, what hat would you be wearing? Yes, I said hat. For me, it would be The Game. These aren't just hats. They're the same vintage style that fans wore back in the 80s and 90s. And guess what? They still go for the same price they did back then. So when you use code LOCKEDON, you'll get your hat, vintage style, for $16.99. That's right. Code LOCKEDON16.99. Head to gamecaps.com. Thegamecaps.com. Grab your team's classic bar or retro circle design and use code LOCKEDON for an exclusive discount, because legends wear The Game, a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, final few moments here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside my pal Kevin Connelly from Ball Durham. He's also the Believe in Duke podcast host, Believe in Duke football podcast host, and we're talking about Duke football and their win over NC State. First ACC victory of the year. We talked last week, Kevin, and we both said, if we're having to talk about a 1-3 football team, man, that's going to be really deflating. And we'll be honest, when the score's 20-7, when Duke's trying to battle back early on in the game, it felt like we could have been heading in that direction. But the rest of the way, Duke was able to mightily outscore NC State.
Yeah, JJ, I mean, I was very blunt in it. I was not high on this team through 3 weeks. And then, like you said, when it's 20-7 and Duke has given up touchdown drives of 74 yards, 99 yards, and 80 yards, you're thinking, here we go again. This has a chance to get out of hand very quickly. But credit Darian Mensah. I thought this was his best game as a Blue Devil, although the stats don't necessarily show it compared to the other two. I talked about some hollow stats in those first 3 games. This was big-time football. These were big-time stats from Darian Mensah. I credit Manny Diaz. I questioned how he had this team ready, how he didn't have this team ready to play football the first 3 weeks of the season. They were ready to play football. They finally responded to adversity. When they needed to make a play multiple times in this game, constantly players stepped up to make the plays. So I was very impressed by this game, the resolve of this team, the execution, and especially the offense. They finally capped off drives with touchdowns, not settling for field goals or having that back-breaking turnover. This is a really fun game to watch and an impressive game to watch.
Darian Mensah finished 19 of 28, 269 yards, 3 touchdowns. You mentioned hollow stats in weeks past. This was the first game of the 4 where Darian Mensah did not get over 300 yards passing. He set the bar so high, Kevin. And yeah, you could argue some of it is Duke trying to play catch up and throwing down the field. The fact of the matter is he had 3 consecutive 300-plus yard games. And here we are, a remarkable game, and yet he falls 30 yards shy of that mark with 269.
But this was his best game.
Yeah.
And it's not, and obviously a lot to do with it because they won. But it was how he was in command of the offense. I said on my show on Sunday morning, recapping this game, that there was a couple of sequences where the play broke down and he looked to scramble and run, not scramble, buy time, and throw it into traffic. Now, the stats won't back that up because sacks go as negative rushing yards in college football. And then obviously you always love to lose rushing yards at the end of a game in victory formation.
Yep.
But I look at that one play on a touchdown drive. I think it was in the second quarter when he ran for 10 yards and picked up a first down. That's what you need to see from him because he has such a big arm, but he's also a really good athlete. He can run. Now, do you want him running the football 15 to 20 times a game? No. But when the play breaks down and he's able to scramble and step up in the pocket, you want him to take off because teams aren't guarding against him scrambling and running, and it's the chance to move the chains and pick up chunk yards at a time. So I was really impressed with him and his development. And like I said, he's still really young. He's still learning the position. He's still learning football, and he has a bright future.
Dude, here's the other thing, Kevin. We talked about this last week. And I know last week was Tulane. The week before was that Illinois game for Duke. I think about that Illinois game, Duke -5 in the turnover category. Against NC State this past Saturday, Duke was +4. Before the Tulane game last week, the defense hadn't had a single takeaway all season. We just watched them come away with 4 in a game like this. And when that happens, it's shorter fields for this offense to work with, therefore not as many yards for Darian Mensah and company to add up.
Well, what I tell you, they come in bunches.
You did.
Turnovers come in bunches. And they did. Now, granted, the one at the end of the first half, did they get a little bit lucky? I think they might have. I think that might have been.
How many times do you watch that replay? Jumping off sides or not jumping off sides in the snap. I mean, it was crazy how it feels simultaneous, but then it looks in live action like it wasn't. I mean,
what was I talking about after the Tulane game? Sometimes you need something to go your way, and you need to take advantage of it. And Duke, at that juncture of the game, needed something to go their way. They got the interception, they scored, and then they get the ball coming out of halftime, and they go down and score again. Sometimes you need those breaks when you're a 1-2 team and you're down 20-7 on your home field early. You need something to break your way, and when it does, you have to capitalize on it. Kind of how we talked about unable to get off the field on third down and unable to make a couple of tough defensive plays, which would have been turnovers against Tulane. Well, they capitalized on those situations against NC State. Their offense paid it off, and that's why they were able to win a game. And honestly, you can make the case that was the turning point of the game. That interception, which led to a touchdown, which then led to the touchdown coming out to start the second half.
Okay, so Duke, 3 of their first 4 games this season have been played at home inside Wallace Wade Stadium. Now they get set for back-to-back road games at Syracuse, at Cal, both ACC matchups for Duke. We'll see how they're able to fare in more coverage coming throughout the week. And Kevin, I know that you've got it all covered over at Ball Durham and then with your podcast as well. Tell me, how can people support you?
Well, JJ, I want to just add one thing to that.
Please.
When you're talking about the upcoming schedule, compared to 5 days ago, how much easier, and I say easier because you never know, does it look now? Yes, you're going on the road to play a Syracuse team, and they just lost their quarterback, Steve Angeli, for the year with his injury suffered against Clemson. And, I mean, I don't know how much it's going to impact how Syracuse plays football, but they were just fined, $25,000 for players faking injuries. And then Cal, one of the teams that I've been such a fan of this year watching, they just got their butts whipped on the road against San Diego State, losing 41-0, I think it was, something that nobody saw coming. Then you have a really good Georgia Tech team coming into your place. And then, I mean, who knows what Clemson's going to be in a month from now, but an absolute train wreck of a team, which I don't know if they're even going to try to play football for the rest of the year because their season's over. Like, there's no playoffs and no ACC championship coming for Clemson this year. So do they even try to put their best foot forward going throughout the rest of the year? I don't know. So when you looked a week ago and you had a 1-2 Duke team playing a 3-0 NC State team, which you had the feeling NC State was going to win, and this season was going to go off the rails for Duke. Now, all of a sudden, a week later, your outlook is, we just won a great game. We're feeling good about ourselves. And our next 4 opponents, 3 of them have major questions about them right now. So it's crazy how things can change in a college football season. I can go on and on, JJ. I'm sure your people don't want to listen to that right now, but if they're not sick and tired of me, they can come listen to me on the Believe in Duke Football podcast. Podcast drop Sundays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We have a special episode up. We posted it on Monday talking about this Duke basketball team for the start of the Duke basketball season with practice starting. It's not just a football podcast. We do heavily cover basketball. And then, as always, you can come read us over at balldurham.com for all your Duke athletics content.
Love it. It's great to see you, Kevin. Thanks for being here today. We'll talk soon, okay?
Thanks, JJ.
All right, that's Kevin Connelly joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. We'll see him on the program again sometime soon. If you haven't done so already, again, please be sure to follow and subscribe to our show for free wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Go ahead and support everything we got going on here at Locked On Blue Devils. Practice is here for Duke basketball and a big-time win for this Duke football team. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.